In the first 6 months of 2026, Chinese companies shipped 19,100 humanoid robots. That's 97% of every humanoid robot sold on Earth, and American firms couldn't fill the remaining 3%. Here's a number that stopped me cold: 19,100. That's how many humanoid robots Chinese manufacturers shipped in just the first half of 2026, globally. Not domestically, globally. And Chinese firms own 97% of that figure. I want to let that sink in for a second, because we're not talking about cheap consumer electronics or solar panels where China's scale advantages are old news. We're talking about the most mechanically complex, software-intensive physical product humans have ever tried to mass produce. Zhiyuan Robotics, also known as Agibot, topped the leaderboard for H1 2026, with Unitree and a handful of other Chinese players filling out the rest of the top tier. Meanwhile, the most famous humanoid robot program in the West, Tesla's Optimus, has been shipping in what the company itself calls limited pilot volumes. Elon Musk has said publicly that mass-producing a humanoid robot is incredibly difficult, and I think that admission is more important than most Western commentators have treated it. The difficulty is real, which makes China's 19,100 units not just a market share story, but a genuine engineering story. Before we go further, one number that changes the whole picture. A humanoid robot contains roughly 40 to 60 degrees of freedom, meaning 40 to 60 separate actuated joints, each requiring a precision actuator, a torque sensor, and a control loop running at millisecond latency. That's not a supply chain problem you solve by throwing money at it overnight. The reason Tesla's Optimus is still in low-volume pilot mode isn't lack of ambition. It's that the harmonic drive actuators and hollow shaft motors these robots depend on require an extremely dense supplier ecosystem to produce at cost. And here is the mechanism that I think most Western analysts are sleeping on. Chinese humanoid robot makers are parasitically, and I mean that as a compliment, parasitically efficient at pulling components from the existing EV supply chain. Battery management systems, motor controllers, lightweight aluminum castings, even some of the LiDAR and vision processing hardware. These are all things BYD, CATL, and 100 Tier 2 suppliers already produce at scale for electric vehicles. Zhiyuan and Unitree are essentially snapping Lego bricks together that China's EV boom already manufactured into existence. I'd argue this is the single biggest structural advantage, and it's one that Boston Dynamics, which still sources many components from a relatively thin American precision manufacturing base, simply cannot replicate quickly. Boston Dynamics has been at this for over a decade and still isn't shipping five-figure volumes. That gap is not about talent. Here's what nobody in the Western press is talking about clearly enough. This rhymes almost exactly with what happened to the solar panel industry between 2010 and 2016. In 2010, German firms like SolarWorld and Q-Cells held the quality crown and a meaningful share of global capacity. By 2016, Chinese manufacturers, leveraging state support, a dense domestic supplier base, and brutal cost iteration, had taken over 70% of global production. By 2023, it was above 80%. The humanoid robot curve looks eerily similar, just compressed. And I'll be honest with you, I was wrong about the timeline. 2 years ago, I thought Tesla's vertical integration strategy, owning everything from the actuator design to the AI training stack, would give Optimus a durable lead by 2026. I underestimated how fast China's ecosystem would compound. The EV supply chain leverage I just described wasn't obvious to me in 2024 the way it is now, sitting here looking at 19,100 units. What I got right was that software would be the long-term differentiator, training data, sim-to-real transfer, whole-body control policies. That race is genuinely still open. But the hardware manufacturing race? China has already won the first lap, and the lead is not symbolic. Reports suggest some Chinese firms are now targeting annual production capacity above 100,000 units by end of 2026, though I'd treat that figure with some caution until we see verified shipment data in H2. So where does this go from here? I think the next 18 months force 3 specific reactions. First, watch Tesla. If Optimus doesn't break 5,000 cumulative shipped units by end of Q1 2027, I think the market starts pricing Optimus as a long-dated option rather than a near-term revenue driver. And that has real implications for Tesla's valuation story, not just its robotics narrative. Second, watch whether any Western government, the US, Germany, the EU collectively, moves to designate humanoid robots as a strategic industrial category the way semiconductors were designated under the CHIPS Act. The political logic is already there. The legislative machinery just hasn't caught up. If that happens, it could create a protected domestic market for Boston Dynamics and emerging US startups like Figure and Agility Robotics, buying them time to scale. Third, and this one I find most interesting, watch the software licensing play. Chinese hardware at scale plus Western AI software is a combination that makes procurement officers in places like Japan, South Korea, and Germany very nervous and very tempted simultaneously. The company that figures out how to bridge that tension, either a Chinese firm with a credible data sovereignty story or a Western firm that white labels Chinese hardware, is going to be sitting on something genuinely valuable. I don't know who wins that hand yet, but I think it gets played in the next 24 months. So, bullish or bearish on China's humanoid robot dominance holding? Here's where I land. Bullish on the hardware lead persisting through at least 2027. Genuinely uncertain on whether software and trust barriers slow the global commercial rollout. 3 things to remember from this. 1. China shipped 19,100 humanoid robots in H1 2026 to 97% global share, and the EV supply chain is the hidden engine making that possible. 2. Tesla's Optimus is the most credible Western challenger, but Musk's own words confirm the manufacturing difficulty is real, and the volume gap right now is not small. 3. The solar panel playbook is the historical template here, and in that story, the window to compete on hardware closed faster than almost anyone predicted. Now here's the question I want you to answer in the comments. Do you think Western governments will intervene with industrial policy before Chinese firms lock in the customer relationships? Or is that ship already sailing? Tell me below. And if this kind of analysis is useful to you, subscribe. I cover Chinese new energy and deep tech every week with as much honesty as I can manage. Drop your answer in the comments. Will Western industrial policy arrive in time to matter, or has the manufacturing window already closed? Subscribe for weekly deep dives on Chinese new energy and tech.